Hey guys, so this is going to be the fourth episode, and today we're going to talk about how you can track your progress accurately. Now, a common question that I get on Instagram, Facebook, is just pretty much I'm not losing weight. So this is the main reason I'm doing this specific episode. Largely, I really don't care about weight. If you don't lose weight, but you hit other certain metrics, that's fine. So I'm going to go into that in a lot more detail today. Basically, how I track my own progress, how I've done so for the last probably 10 years now, how I do it with all my clients, and how we base their progress. Is it actually achieving the results that we want on a weekly basis? Do we need to make changes? That sort of stuff. Okay, so you will find a lot of value in this, so please make sure you do listen to the end because all of this is going to be very important. We're going to be taking an overview, holistic picture of your progress as opposed to purely just relying on the scale alone. Now, all of this is still going to apply whether you're in the United States or Australia, depending on the metrics that you're using, but we'll go through this in detail. So in the previous episodes, you obviously have already worked out your calories, you've worked out your deficit. Starting around a 30% deficit for most people is pretty much a good starting point. Now, there's three things I like to track with clients and myself. So that is your measurements, your weight, so your scale weight, and your photos. Now, when it comes to progress, and I'll just say this early in this episode now, if you are not losing weight, but your measurements are going down in specific areas, which I'll cover off in a moment, keep doing what you're doing, okay? We don't really care too much about the weight. Now, let's say you do want to track your weight. How do you do it? What I suggest that you do is you want to weigh yourself daily. So every single morning. Now, the best time to weigh yourself is first thing in the morning, butt naked, on the scale, before you eat or drink anything. Preferably haven't gone to the toilet first if you can. Jump on the scale, whatever the weight is, log it, and then carry on with the rest of your day. Now, there's many reasons why we do a daily weigh-in, which I'm going to go through with you now. But I would recommend daily weigh-ins versus weekly weigh-ins or monthly weigh-ins. Now, the reason we do daily weigh-ins is because it helps smooth out the bumps. The body weight or your body weight can fluctuate for many, many reasons. So things like carbohydrate intake, how much salt that you've had, whether or not you've eaten, whether or not you've gone to the toilet, and just weighing yourself on the wrong day at the wrong time. If you're female and you're premenopausal, or if you have your period, that can also be another kilo on the scale overnight for no reason, and it's nothing to do with body fat. There's so many different reasons why the scale goes up and down. So relying solely on the scale is the wrong way to go about weight loss. At the end of the day, we don't really care about how much you weigh. But anyway, I digress. I'll go back to the tracking. So weigh yourself every single day, and we're going to take the average for the week. So first thing in the morning, or this is how I would typically tell clients to weigh themselves. First thing in the morning, if you have a 9 to 5 job, you'd get up, you'd go to the toilet, have a shower, dry yourself off, butt naked, jump on the scale, log your weight, get dressed, carry on with the rest of your day. All right, that's how you weigh yourself every single day. Now, we don't care what the daily weigh-ins are. We only care about the weekly averages. So basically, you're going to take all 7 days, add them together, divide that by 7, and then you're going to get your weekly average. Now, we're only going to compare your weekly averages. We don't care about the daily fluctuations. It's only your weekly averages that we are comparing on a week-to-week basis. So if your weekly average the following week is lower than your previous week, amazing. You've lost body fat, most likely. Keep doing what you're doing. Now, there are apps that you can get. I personally, for my clients, I actually have a spreadsheet that does all of this. It's all built in, but you can download apps. So from memory, on Android, you can download the Libra, Libra app, and you can log in your weight daily, and it will track the trends for you. And I believe on iPhone it is Happy Scale, and the same concept. You can log your weight daily and it'll track the averages and trends for you and give you a nice graph. Now, the common question that I get is, I'm tracking my calories and I'm not losing weight. So there could be a number of reasons why this is the case. Usually, 99% of the time, it's because you're not eating the calories that you say that you are. Now, if you happen to weigh yourself on Monday, and let's say you started off at 79 kilos, then through the week, you went down 2 kilos. So you're 79, down to 78, down to 77. And then on the Sunday, you happen to weigh in back at 79. So if you were just comparing Monday to Sunday and you only weighed in on those 2 days of the week, then you'd look at the program and be like, well, this is not working, this is rubbish, I don't want to do this anymore. However, if you had a look at the fluctuation through the week and noticed that your weight was trending down, then the program's working. You're losing weight on the scale. So fantastic, keep doing what you're doing. Don't change anything. Now, weight is all well and good. All right, weight's okay. It's a good metric to track. It gives us a rough idea of what's happening in the body, whether or not you're gaining muscle, losing fat, gaining fat over the long term. It's a compass. It gives us a general direction in terms of how things are going. Now, the most important measurements or the most important metrics to track are going to be your measurements. Now, all we care about, if you're overweight and you want to lose body fat, all we care about is physically becoming a smaller person. That's all. Now, the question I always like to put forward to my clients who come to me and they say, I want to lose weight. I want to weigh 60 kilograms. I want to weigh 50 kilograms. Or if you're a guy, I want to weigh 70 or 80 kilograms, whatever the number is. Usually most people will have an idea in their head of what they're going to look like at that number. So what I then like to say to my clients is, let's say they're starting off at 70 kilos and they want to get down to 60 kilos. And I would usually say to them, okay, great. If you were to weigh 70 kilos and you're currently a size 12 in your dress, pants, clothes, whatever, but you got down to a size 6 and you're still 70 kilos, would you care? 95% of people are like, well, no, I just want to fit into a certain size clothes, or I just want to look a certain leanness. Fantastic. So stop caring about the weight. Stop it. Ignore the weight from now on. We still track it, but we don't pay any attention to it. So into your measurements, pardon me. So things that I track with my clients and how I track my progress is on the very first week, you want to do a full body measurement. So that includes your neck, your chest at the widest point, your shoulder circumference at the widest point, your arm, so you can do this relaxed and flexed, so like a bicep tense, your upper waist. So for upper waist, this is the space between your hips and your ribs. Your lower waist, for men this is a bit easier because this is usually about belly button height. For women it can vary a lot more because women's hips vary so much in size. So the lower waist may vary a lot more for women. Your hips, which is your bum, your thigh, so at the very top of your thigh at the widest point, and your calf at the widest point. Now, every single client that I have, I get them to do full body measurements at the very start. Every single measurement that I just went through, that's what we do. Now, on a week-to-week basis, we only track a few specific measurements, and I'm going to explain to you what they are and why. So on a week-to-week basis, we track chest, we track upper waist, lower waist, hips, and thigh. Now, I would say probably 70% to 80% of my clients are mostly women, which is why I put an emphasis on the chest, hips, and thighs, as well as upper and lower waist. But if you're a guy, the most important measurements tend to be the upper and the lower waist, and I'll explain why in a moment. So those are the measurements that we track. Now, how do you track them? Again, first thing in the morning, butt naked, go to the toilet, have a shower, do what you need to do. I would recommend that you track your measurements weekly. So every single week, pick a day that you like. I would usually recommend either a Friday or a Saturday or even a Sunday morning, provided that your previous 2 days nutrition has still been on point. For women tend to store more body fat around the chest, the hips and thigh, and the upper waist to a degree. Now with men, most of the body fat tends to accumulate around the abdomen, so the love handles and the belly button area. So that's usually the widest point for most men. Now this is usually, it can be hormonal reasons, but it's also mostly genetic. So women just tend to store more fat around the thighs and hips, and men just tend to store it more around the waist. Now, the most important metric for most women is going to be the upper waist, and within my program and my system, we have a healthy waist target, which I will touch on today. But for women, the upper waist is usually a better indication for fat loss compared to the lower waist, just because women's hips vary so much in size. Now men, it's the opposite way around. Men, usually the lower waist is a better predictor of fat loss compared to the upper waist. Now for women, if any of the measurements go down, such as your chest, upper waist, lower waist, hips, and or thighs, you've lost fat that week, provided you're being accurate with your measurements. If they go down, if you at least hit 2, 3 plus, and the scale hasn't budged, you have lost body fat. Keep doing what you are doing. Do not change anything, okay? For men, more specifically, lower waist, but we also like to see the upper waist go down too. Sometimes for men, you can lean down from the top down. So everything sort of slows down once you get to a certain level of leanness. So sometimes the small waist will come down, and then once that's decided, I don't want to lose any more weight off my small waist, then the lower waist will start to come down, which is fine. It doesn't matter. It's like an either or scenario. That's very simply how you do your measurements. Now, like I was saying just previously, I do recommend that you do it on a weekly basis. If you are the kind of person who tends to go out Friday night or Saturday night, your food choices that you have when you go out can sometimes adjust your measurements the following 1 to 2 days. So if you're really strict and you eat pretty much exactly the same thing every day and you don't vary up your foods, so you don't have like really low calories, then a slightly higher carb day on Friday or Saturday, then I would usually just recommend you do your measurements on a Saturday or a Sunday. Now, if, however, Friday comes along and even if you've planned out your weekly calorie average, but you plan on having slightly higher calories for the weekend and slightly lower calories during the week, I would always make sure that you've had at least 3 to 4 good days of solid dieting before you do your measurements. So as an example, Susie from Monday to Friday is really low in her calories just because she's so busy at work. But that also allows her to be a bit more social on the weekends, but still stay within the calorie deficit. So because her calories go up slightly over the course of the Friday and the Saturday, if she was to do her measurements on Sunday, her measurements aren't going to change as much as 3 to 4 days or 5 days of a really good solid deficit from Monday to Friday. So if you're a weekend eater, so if you just eat more socially on the weekend and more carb-based foods and salty foods, I would usually recommend that you do your measurements on a Friday morning. All right. If you don't, if your food is pretty much consistent every single day, then pick any day on the Saturday. But just make any day on the weekend, but just make it consistent. The same day, same time each week. First thing in the morning, butt naked, after you've weighed yourself, do those main measurements, okay? Now, all we care about is becoming physically smaller. So if you are smaller than you were last week, you have lost body fat. Now, to give you a rough estimation in terms of what this means if your measurements go down, for every centimeter that men lose on their lower waist, their belly button, is about 1 kilogram worth of body fat, okay, on average in the long term. So yes, if you've just started your diet last week and you've lost 3 centimeters, all of that isn't going to be fat. It's not necessarily 3 kilos. You'll probably lose some water retention, some bloating, food's gone through your system, you're eating a bit less. But past that first week, even possibly first 2 weeks, every centimeter that you lose off your lower waist, your belly button for men, is about 1 kilogram worth of fat. Now the same concept applies for women, but more specifically for the upper waist. Now, take this with a grain of salt. It's not always the upper waist. Women do have a bit more varying body shapes compared to men, which is why I like to measure more things with women than just men. So upper waist is a good indication that if you have lost 1 centimeter on your upper waist, it's probably a good guide that you've lost roughly about 1 kilogram. All right. But if you are a woman and you just tend to store a lot more body fat around your waist and not much around your thighs, then if your lower waist comes down, fantastic, that's fine. Again, it's not an absolute, but 90% of the population will sort of be hip dominant and say chest dominant body fat storage, and then there's a small population of women who will just store it around their waist, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So usually about 1 centimeter off the waist is a good indication that you've lost about 1 kilogram of body fat. Now, I did used to train a client previously, and she had ripped abs. She was leaner than I was, and she only stored body fat in her legs and thighs. So her waist didn't even change for the course of about 6 to 12 weeks. But her thighs, bum were going down 5, 10, 12 centimeters over the course of that time. So again, it's always client dependent or person dependent. Now, if the measurements are going down, fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. Now, I did touch on this in the previous episode, and that's how do you know if you need to lose weight? And that's based on your healthy waist targets. So within my programs, I have a system which is basically your healthy waist system, or the healthy waist targets. Now, for men, and I've got my calculations here, if your waist circumference at your belly button is more than 50% of your height, you need to lose weight. For women, if your small waist, the one between your rib cage and your hips, if that's more than 46% of your height, you need to lose weight. Okay. For the lower range, so that is your healthy cutoff point. So above that, you're basically at an unhealthy body fat percentage. Now we have a lower healthy body fat percentage as well. So let's say you've gotten to your healthy target, which I've just ran through. If you're 100 centimeters tall for a male, 200 centimeters tall for a male, and you got down to 100 centimeters in your waist circumference, you're basically at the cusp of the healthy waist target limit. So we don't want you any higher than that forever for the rest of your life. For women, I can't do the math in my head, but it would obviously be a bit less than 100 centimeters. Now, going into the lower limits, for men, this works out to be 47% of your height. So however tall you are, if you want lean six-pack abs on the beach, about 10 to 12% body fat, you will need to get your lower waist down to about 47% of your height. And for women, a similar number applies, but this is for your small waist. So for women, if you want to get equivalent to what a male would be, so 10 to 12% for a male is about, it's about 18% for a female-ish, somewhere around there, is you would want to get your small waist down to about 38% of your height. Okay. Now I don't have the calculations, I can't do that on my phone for you, but those are the numbers. Obviously, you can fall in anywhere between those two ranges. Perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. Now, as you start approaching, and from a social perspective, as you start approaching these numbers, especially on the lower end, people are probably going to start questioning you, start getting a bit concerned about how lean you're getting. Ignore that. These numbers are very healthy, and generally speaking, and again, provided your diet is set up well, the closer you get to these lower limits, the healthier your body fat will be. All right, so we have an upper healthy body fat percentage, which is basically at that cutoff point for your healthy waist target. and we have a lower limit to your healthy body fat percentage. But across the board, in all research, shows that the leaner you get up until a point, which is your lower target, which I just mentioned, all your health markers will keep improving. Now, hormonally speaking, usually the lower you go below these numbers, you can start getting into more adverse health effects. So things like men, testosterone levels start to decrease, and it's not like an off or on switch, but it's like your unhealthy body fat percentage. The higher you go, the more overweight you become, the more at risk you are of developing health issues. Just like having too lean of a body fat percentage, the leaner and leaner and leaner that you get, the more hormonally disruptive it becomes. Now, the same with women. Women are a little bit more sensitive to this, I suppose you could say. There's more issues and things that could arise. Now, a really good indication that you're either too low in calories, doing too much training, not meeting sufficient needs for your fat and your protein requirements, or a combination of all of these, is if you lose your menstrual cycle. All right, now, if you lose your menstrual cycle, you're very lean at this number or below, and you're on very low calories. At any point, if you lose your menstrual cycle, you need to stop dieting. You need to go back to maintenance as soon as possible. Losing your menstrual cycle due to chronic dieting or from lack of nutrition or being too low in body fat is very, very unhealthy for you. All right? And you need to get your period back as soon as possible. And I can't emphasize that enough. So, going back to a happier note, those are your healthy waist targets. That's what you should be aiming for. You do not need to worry about your weight. Your weight is going to do whatever it wants to do. Now, funnily enough, the best outcome that you could achieve is if your weight stays the same or increases while your measurements come down. And yes, this is possible, not necessarily for the long term, and obviously it depends on how much body fat you've got to go. If you've only got like 5 kilos, maybe 10 kilos to lose, you could possibly recomp quite well, especially if you're new to training. Whereas if you have 50 or 100 kilos to lose, you're probably not going to stay the same weight. So it's always dependent on the person, obviously. But your first goal should be to get down to your healthy waist target. Once you're there, as a coach, me personally, I've done my job. I've gotten you down to a pretty relatively healthy body fat percentage. From there, you can keep leaning down to the point whereby you're happy with your look and your shape. So we have your healthy waist target, and then we essentially have your vanity number, which is your lower waist target. Now, if you are not losing scale weight and you're taking your averages and nothing's moving and it's been a month or 2 months, it doesn't matter how long, but your measurements continue to come down, please keep doing exactly what you are doing. Just keep going, because we don't care about the scale. Yes, we track it. It's a compass. It gives us a rough idea of what's going on, but measurements are the most important thing. Now, this is why I'm creating this episode, because I get so many questions about people saying that I'm not losing weight. All right. And hopefully this episode has encompassed why I don't care about weight, the possibility of the reasons why you may not be losing weight. It's probably an accuracy issue with your calories, but if you're being diligent and your weight's not going down, you're weight training a few times a week, but you're tracking accurately with your weight and your measurements go down, it doesn't matter. Just keep doing what you're doing, all right? Now, that is pretty much it. Now, with this episode, it is going on to my YouTube channel. So if you have any follow-up questions on this, please let me know. If you need guidance or help, I have one-to-one online coaching available at the time I'm doing this video. But measurements are something that you will need to start tracking on a weekly basis. Now, I would also encourage people to do, if you're going someplace and you can't weigh yourself, just start getting into the habit of just tracking your waist measurements, or the areas where you store the most body fat. Just start getting into the habit of doing that once a week. If you find it starting to go up, then you can just rein in your diet back, like your calories back a little bit. I should probably also mention, when you do track your measurements, something I forgot to mention before, is when you track your measurements and how you track it on the day can vary from week to week. So to ensure you're getting as close as possible, one thing I would also recommend is when you're about to do your measurements, especially around your waist, try and resume the same posture that you had previously. This you'll get better at with practice. Now, before you do your measurements, I want you to exhale as deeply as you can, and then tense your abdomen as hard as you can, and then take your measurement. Just the amount of oxygen that you take in can change how much your waist is. If you're bent over or if you're slightly to the side, that can change your measurement. And by tensing your stomach and not tensing your stomach can be the difference of a few centimeters as well. So if we are constant with our measurements, so breathing out, exhaling, you're getting rid of any extra air. If you're a bit bloated, by tensing your abs, you're still getting relatively close to what your tensed abs were last time, even if you have a bit of bloating. And then the only thing you're really measuring on top of that is how much extra fat mass you have. So hope that little extra tip helps you as well. That's something I like to tell my clients too when they're measuring themselves. If you can lose anywhere from a half a centimeter to a centimeter per week on any of the above measurements that I just went through, keep doing what you're doing. Amazing. That's fantastic weight loss progress. And then obviously you can then gauge how much centimeters you need to lose to get to the point where you're healthy, or if your abs lean. So this gives you, instead of just giving you an arbitrary number of, I want to weigh 60 kilos, I want to weigh 50 kilos, this gives you concrete numbers, exact measurements that you can achieve based on your own individual height and genetics and whether or not you're male or female. Cool. All right, so I hope you found that helpful. In the next episode, I'm going to be going through rapid fat loss diets. So how you can include getting lean very, very fast. Is it right for you? How to go about it, how to approach it, and then obviously how to get out of a rapid fat loss diet approach, because I'm currently going through my own rapid fat loss. As always, guys, if you found this helpful, please make sure you do like, subscribe for more. Please share this with other people that you think that may find it helpful. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.